morning, world. Welcome to another episode of 4 a.m. in Quarantine. I'm your host, Steven Rivera, and I'm here with our special guest of this morning, Michael Schnorr. He is a sales veteran of 24 years experience in various industries, currently in the import-export, specializing in food commodities and global imports is the company in which does those imports and exports, mainly with 24 countries worldwide, manufacturing, food service, retail segments of the food industry. Excited for him to tell his story and excited for him to share everything going on, in our current world, in the import-export world and everything going on with COVID-19. Perfect timing, but brother, to have this talk, and I really appreciate you hopping on, Mike.
Hey, man, appreciate you having me. It's nice to have a platform to talk about things that most people don't generally look into or understand, and they wonder what goes on. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. And I think that the first thing I want you to, we'll get into import, export, how that's affecting consumer shopping habits and everything like that, in the food industry, how the supply chain is currently being affected as well. But I want you to tell your story. I know you've been in sales pretty much your entire life, man. And I know you've probably seen a lot. You've dealt with a lot. You've dealt with a lot of people. And sales, your relationships, become everything. At a point, right?
100%.
So I want you to discuss your story from New York. I know you're born and bred in New York, and now you're in Florida. How'd you wind up in Florida, and kind of give us your story, how you started in sales and everything, man.
Sure. Well, let's go back. Born and raised in Queens. So like Steve said, New York never left me. Decided to move my business down to Florida as I progressed in my years doing sales. It was easy to move my food business down here because a lot of my food business was down here, especially with all the major cruise lines around the world. So your Holland Americas, your Royal Caribbeans, your Carnival Corporation, that was millions and millions of pounds of business, and I had to be accessible. But to backtrack a little bit, I picked up my first phone and made my first appointment at 14 years old as a part-time job out of 9th grade in high school, doing telemarketing for a chimney sweep company.
I love
it. I guess you could say I'm a born salesman. I love talking to people, love interacting with people, love, making relationships happen and occur and fixing problems. So I kind of got hooked at that point. And when I started seeing from 14 to say 16, how much money I can make is like these little commissions at 14 and 16, you don't think much about it when you have no responsibility. So, when you got a couple $100 in your pocket and you're doing it yourself and you're earning it yourself, you're like, all right, I could do this for a living. I can make this a career. So I progressed through those years, graduated high school, did my 2 years of college, had no idea what I wanted to do, never wanted to go for some major like an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor. I knew I had a gift of gab, as they say, and I knew I could talk to people and sell products. I'm what I like to call a one-sheet salesman. You don't have to have me in your industry, but if you give me enough on one sheet and let me study it for a day, I'll go right into it and I'll see what I can do. Don't know what my turnover rate was at that time or what it could be, but it's getting into the product, understanding the product, whatever it may be, and really feeling it out. And if I enjoy it, if I love it, if I like it, I attack it head on. If it's something that doesn't suit me, then I'll move on from it, but I'll at least give it an attempt. And in sales, like I tell anybody who's a new salesman or has been doing it and needs to reinvent themselves, you got to love what you're doing, and you got to love the angle. You got to love the game. It's a hustle. Sales is a hustle. And what people need to realize ultimately is that sales, at the end of the day, you do it every day subconsciously and you don't even realize it. You want that girlfriend, you got to sell her why she should like you. You want to go get that car, you got to, sell the guy why he should give it to you at that price if he wants to move it off the lot. It's all negotiation. It's all psychology. So, as I came up, I went through different companies. I got out of college. I had an internship. And that's really where I started in, quote unquote, low-level corporate America. I worked for a company that did military contracts for wholesale uniforms and garments and stuff like that, and other military type items. And we exported to your Army Navy stores and brought it to these people and brought it to those people. That's where it kind of took off a little bit because I went into product development, and product development to me was intriguing. So we took a twist on the traditional military camouflage look at the time, and we put it on the street. And at that time, just like this is relevant, it was relevant then because that's when hip hop, everybody was wearing camo. So everybody wanted all this adorned stuff with all these crazy insignias and stuff. I basically helped the product development team do that. Then I was doing sales inside. And after that, I left. At the time, I was married, and my ex-wife's aunt was working for a company, a commodity company, food company, and she said, "You don't look happy at your job." And I said, "Well, I'm looking for a change, want to do something new." She's like, "Listen, I work for this food company. They sell fruits, they sell vegetables. You could bullshit, you could talk, you could do this. Why don't you try and see if it's something you want to do? I'll get you an interview." And here we are, 2020, basically just about almost 15 years in the industry. And I've been selling food ever since.
Wow. Wow. I love it, man. And, I think your skills are transferable to any industry, right? Any business.
100%.
And like you said, it's just about having that mindset and having a passion for what you're selling, right? Because if you don't believe in what you're selling, you're never going to be able to sell it. And if you are, you won't be able to sleep at night, right?
I don't. When I started selling and I was in love with a product, I was always trying to find a dynamic way to turn around and figure out how to get it to somebody else. But with that comes experience, and you learn to tone down the brain waves. You do need to get a good night's sleep at night. And I'm going to tell you that's a proponent I learned very late in my sales life. And it's probably been more instilled in me now. I used to go to bed at 3:00 in the morning and work an 18, 20-hour day and feel accomplished. I read a lot of business books. I have a library outside my office. I mean, it's work smarter, not harder. There's no point to work 18 hours. I could do more in 6 hours than most people do in 2 days. And it's all about efficiency. It's all about putting yourself effectively in the situation and solving the problems. And that's essentially what it comes down to. It's one of those things. You need to have a clear head, but you got to love what you do. And if you love what you do and you have a clear head, it's only that much more emphasis on when you're putting it in front of somebody.
I love it. Yeah. And it literally hit it on the head there with what you said. You can, working smarter, not harder, right? You don't have to put in 20 hours a day in order for you to be that hustler, right? And that person that's grinding all day, because like you said, once you're able to get hyper focused and super focused in the zone and you're working for 2-3 hours, right? Those 2-3 hours can outwork someone else's 15 hours hands down, right?
100%. You have to be efficient and effective. And what I mean by that is Outlook, all these CRMs, all these tools that people use now for communication other than the old traditional phone call, which I truly miss. I miss the phone ringing 50 times a day. Everybody wants an email now. Everybody wants some people still use fax, and I can respect that. That's still old school to me because how many people fax? But you could digitally fax now. For me, it's real simple. If you effectively create groups, if you effectively create your buying patterns and who's dealing with what, and you have a minimal basic CRM, you don't got to go out and spend $10,000 on a customer management system. You just got to efficiently set up everything so you know who to target, who to hit. And in 1 minute, I could send an email out to 1,000 people and have 200 people email me back saying, "I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that, what can we do?" As opposed to one email at a time, write another letter, write another intro. It's not worth it. It means nothing. Because all you're doing is wasting time. That's 20 hours of your day other than the other stress and headaches you deal with as a business owner and as a sales guy, whether you're a veteran or a new guy who never sold anything in his life. You need to efficiently set yourself up from day one.
Absolutely. It's all about setting up systems, right? I mean, at the end of the day.
100%. It's all about systematic operation and systematic, determination is what I like to call it. You got to be determined to systematically attack things so you know what you're doing. The one thing I will say, and this transcends just into the sales part of our conversation, is that I don't care what anybody tells you. You can't go to school and learn how to be a salesman. It's something you're born with. It's something you're given. You can learn how to quote unquote sell, but to be truly a salesman and cover the negotiation, the relationships, the customer service, and be a full wound ball salesman, you can't learn that with getting a 4-year college degree. No disrespect to anybody who goes and gets a college degree because it's a great thing to have. But if you're going to do sales for the rest of your life and be quote unquote a straight hustler the rest of your life and make money the right way, you got to be well-rounded. And that's something that you just don't get taught. You learn it on the street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you say you've learned most of your skills by actually doing, right? And by actually experiencing, right?
Yep. In my world, it's eat or be eaten. There's no other way around it.
And I think that's just an entrepreneur in general, right? It's someone that owns their own business, runs their own business. you could be told a million different things. And of course, you want to have mentors, you want to have people that you lean on and learn from, right? Learn from their
Absolutely.
mistakes. But at the end of the day, you have to fall on your face a couple of times, have a couple of those failures in order for you to understand that, hey, I got to learn from what I've just done. And now this is the correct way to do it. And as you continue to do more and take more action, then that follows, right?
In my 24 years of selling, I've gotten steamrolled, hit by an 18-wheeler, run over by a train, hit by various trucks, and then hit again and hit again. And you know what? Like Rocky Balboa says, it's how many punches can you take and keep getting up? How many hits can you take and keep getting up? If you know what you're worth, go out and get it. Well, that's the reality. In sales, you got to know what you're worth. Time is money, number one. And two, more importantly than anything, is don't undervalue your product, no matter if it's more expensive than the other guy. It's what you bring to the table behind the actual physical, tangible thing that makes you successful. Customer service, follow-up, is it on time? The quality, what you said it was going to be. All those factors is what makes you money. It's not what you sell. You sell the solutions. You don't sell the product.
Totally.
Very simple.
How do you take that mindset, right? Understanding that the more value, right, and the higher quality value that you're putting out and you're providing to your customers is the main focus. It's not the money, right? Because the money follows. How do you take that and put that into perspective for yourself when you're going out and selling every day? Because I think that's a struggle for a lot of people. Is a lot of people just see the money, right? They understand that there's a lot of money in this, but without understanding that, you have to provide value before you ever get a dime back. You may get lucky once or twice, right? But it's never going to be consistent. It's not sustainable. How do you take that mindset and run with it?
So the key word you just used is value, and the value encompasses you as a person to your client and what you do within the spectrum of the item that's on the table that you're giving them. So you want to simplify your life as a salesman, and any salesman who's going to listen to this, I'll tell you right now, don't oversell the product. Let the product sell itself. And selling itself is the buildup of the overall value of what you're bringing to the table. The tangible product is off the table. It's how you connect with the buyer, how you get their triggers and figure out their triggers and what they need you to solve. The best way to sell anything is sell the solution. Don't sell the product.
I love it.
And that's the mindset I have, because in my world, it's a supply and demand game. There's 500 people offering the same products I have, but my customers know I bring value. There's a problem, I fix it. They need something immediately, I find it. If I need to pay a little bit more to get it done, I do it. I'll cut into my profit to make that guy happy, because I'll get my return on the back end, because I sold the value and I sold myself as to what I'm going to give you, and you got what you wanted exactly. There was no secrets.
Yeah, mic drop. It's so true though, and I think it's just so overlooked. And a lot of times you don't learn that until you actually have the experience, like we spoke about.
Yeah, most sales guys are overzealous, especially new ones. They want to just walk in and they know the ceiling is unlimited. There's no ceiling when you sell, especially when you're a commission salesman and you work for yourself. Listen, I've been paid a lot of money in my life working for salaried people. I've got my commission checks. I've done all that kind of stuff. This is all me. I don't sell. I don't make money. I don't pay my bills. I'm like anybody else who don't have a job, right? So the more effort you put in, but you learn how to streamline your efforts and clean them up to make them effective as possible in the shortest amount of time, is what makes you successful. The money will follow as long as you provide the value and don't compromise yourself by overextending hours and time and taking away from clearing your mind. Because if you do that, you're going to ruin yourself and you end up hitting a burnout stage, which I've come very close to in 24 years.
Yep. And that comes back to just balance, right? And being able to effectively balance your life and your business. Everything can't just be, business, money, right? It's got to be, you still have to get out, have those hobbies, create those moments in which you'll cherish forever.
Yeah.
Right?
You need clarity. You need clarity. And unfortunately, as much as I love that concept and everybody tries to follow a work-life balance, based on the way the world is today with technology, you're accessible 24/7 only because what's in your pocket is basically a computer. You can never get away from it. It's how you maintain and handle the time periods in which you're making yourself accessible to that.
Yep.
And it took me a long time to get away from. I was on my phone 24/7 to wake up in the middle of the night. Oh, I got to check an email. Now it can wait till the morning. You know what? The world's not going to come to an end.
Totally. Yeah, and I want to shift gears a little bit and discuss what the world has been just talking about, right? And what the world wants to know more about is, I think you're the perfect guy to kind of shed some light on this, and that's the food shortages, right? And everything going on in our food supply chain, right?
Sure.
Because I'm going to Whole Foods, I'm shopping at Stop and Shop, ShopRite, wherever, right? Especially in the beginning of all this, when we weren't really prepared for it. All the shelves were empty within the first couple of weeks. No one knew what to do, no toilet paper. And, I want you to explain how we've kind of, how now there's food on the shelves, right? So something changed from the beginning till now. And how do we see that whole thing going forward from here and, affecting, our habits, right? And what we're doing, from a shopper standpoint.
So essentially right now, if you want to call it a food shortage, we can call it a food shortage. Now, the initial standoff in any situation like that is that it's a panic amongst the herd. It's a mindset. Everybody hears something on media. They hear it on social media. They hear it on the radio. This guy said this guy said that. Their mind internally takes it and goes into the subconscious, and they all sit there and go, holy shit, what am I going to do? Well, okay, step back 25 steps, take a deep breath. You don't need to fill a meat chest with 50 pounds of meat. You don't need to go buy 500 pounds of chicken. You don't need to buy 40 pounds of vegetables, okay? That's not the way you handle a situation like this. You need to sit back, evaluate, and really emphasize what's important. You got a family of 4. How much food do you need for a month, a week? How do you plan your grocery shopping before this panic amongst the herd? And nobody thinks about that. They automatically go to, I got to get. Well, unfortunately, the food shortage is more so temporary than it is going to be long-term. And the reason being is you have crops, excess crops everywhere. They can't go anywhere. Distribution channels are limited, shut down. You have people dumping thousands and thousands of gallons of milk, okay? Let's do the math on the milk for a second. Remember when you were younger, 10 years old, 12 years old, you go to a store? Milk used to cost $1 and change. Now it's almost $5 for a full gallon of milk.
Yep.
They could have donated that stuff. They could have done so much stuff with that. It's a tax write-off. There's so many angles to take what you can't use and give it to other people and use it to your benefit as a business. People aren't thinking like that. Their first instinct is, all my money for this crop is lost and whatever the situation is. Then you're tossing all this unused produce. Food banks have exceeded and went up almost 40%, 43% I think is the exact number at this point right now, with increases of people coming to get food, which these people could have easily given to those people. But they didn't do that because there's no profit in it on a donation. But a donation is no different than a nonprofit. You get a certain amount of allowance from the government to write things off. In this situation, the government's going to take into account, wow, okay, maybe you donate 10,000 pounds a year. Now you have to donate 1.5 million pounds a year. What's the truth behind that? The truth behind that is you could have benefited yourself as a business and you could have done something good for your community. You could have helped people who really need this stuff. And then, I mean, right now, you got to look at it this way. All this shortage and stuff really comes down to a mandatory government shutdown because they don't consider things essential. This is not essential. I would have to disagree with that on my personal opinion from a food industry standpoint. Food is essential. People need to eat. Now, that's why there's such a rush for canned goods and all this stuff that's non-perishable. They think this is doomsday. They don't look at this as, oh, you know what? We got to keep people in work. But the problem is, and I had mentioned this to you when we talked prior to having this conversation, is the reality is that people don't take the proper precautions for their workers. Smithfield had 900 cases of COVID in its plant, and they were still on a limited capacity. As far as I'm concerned, I would think the government would look at them as essential. Mr. Trump wants to keep food manufacturing open accordingly because it's essential. You need to have stuff on the shelves. So wait, maybe you don't have 50 different varieties of what you like to buy, but you still need to keep the basics on the shelf. And now, what are your basics in a pantry? Bread, milk, eggs, cheese, and some kind of protein. Those are the staples. So if you do that on a consecutive level, but if you just back off a little bit, that's fine. The biggest problem is you can't move additional product from your normal supply chain operation to go around the country and circumvent your own system that you've created in your path of least resistance, because all it's going to do is cause additional heavy expenses on top of shutting your plants down, on top of losing employees, on top of people getting sick, not the proper precautions being taken. And then again, at the end of the day, all you're going to do is drive the markets up in terms of food prices, because what you are putting out there, you're putting out there. Now, you look at staples, for example, rice, grains, beans. Typically, U.S. consumption on those, is pretty extensive. But at the same time, short, you got costing for consumers is more. I mean, you can go into a store and buy black beans at 70 cents a can and a great value label, and now you're going to probably pay $1 for them because they can't keep them on the shelf. There's just not enough. Yep. There's so much backlog in production. And then you got to remember, too, major export countries, for example, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, all the grains, a lot of them that come into the United States or are brought in from there come into the United States and other places, of course. But those are major items. Those are health items for some people. Some people use them as side dishes. Then you got rice. India and Cambodia, the two largest rice importers into the United States. India probably being the foremost. And then you also have Pakistan in there. Their exports to us have become limited because of the fact that certain things are not allowed into the country. They're shut down with their government regulations to do production. I mean, you name it. And then you got Egypt is one of the biggest bean exporters to the United States. They're off the market for 3 months to ship any beans to this country that are dry. So what are you supposed to do? Rely on domestic supply? It's impossible. It's not feasible. And then you had mentioned to me when we were talking about different topics, hyperinflation. In my opinion, that's the worst case. We haven't hit a hyperinflation, and it was projected that was going to happen several years ago when we had food issues and certain things with crop disasters and force majeures, which is basically a crop got destroyed by an act of God kind of thing. Things that you can't control never happen, right? So the way I look at it is you're going to see grocery prices spike. It's going to happen. There's no way around it.
Let me stop you there, though. Spike meaning, 10, 15%, 20%, 50%. What
I don't think you're going to hit a 50%, but I would say your average item that you buy over the next, and again, this is all conjecture in my opinion, based on what's happening. If you were to figure from now, and this thing ends for, I'd say, at least a year or two until there's a recoup and people get their money back and they're able to get back to a regular normal of doing what's necessary to get food on the shelves, and things slow down and the backlogs are off and trying to get the raw materials to make it happen, I really think you're looking at probably like a year or two where you'll see a heightened price in groceries. And I would say 50% is excessive. 20% is not out of reason, but I would say in the 10 to 12, maybe 10 to 15% category.
Okay.
And you're going to see it more on the lower level side of the shopping world. So like you said, you go to a Stop and Shop. They're not the cheapest on the block, but they're not expensive. You go to a ShopRite, they try and be as cheap as possible for the consumer. You'll see those spike. Where you won't feel it is if you go to Whole Foods and you shop at Whole Foods now, you walk out of there with one bag of groceries, it costs you $40. So you're going to go into a Whole Foods, certain items, you might see a spike, but you wouldn't feel it if you're a regular consumer.
Love it. Yeah. And I think that's been a huge concern, of a lot of people. I know for one thing, a big, thing that keeps coming up in the news and media is Tyson, right? And the potential pork shortage, or can you dive a little bit deeper into that and shed some light on what's going on
Sure.
in that world?
So Smithfield is the largest pork producer in the United States. I don't have the exact count of how many facilities and manufacturing facilities they have around the country, but they're the largest. There was, I believe, 900 reported cases of COVID within their Iowa plant in Sioux City, or Idaho. I forget which one it is, one of the plants. But needless to say, Tyson's one of the major players. They pretty much dominate the food industry. They're probably in the top 5, if not top 3 largest companies that produce various brands, et cetera. So with that being said, you're looking at the fact that they have the ability, as does a Smithfield, as does a Purdue, and all these growers I deal with in the Northwest, the big money guys, the deep pocket guys, these massive conglomerate corporations, the Kraft Heinz of the world. There's a company, for example, and I'll go back to Tyson in a second. They got 40, 50 different brands on the shelf that most people who aren't in the food industry would never even know unless they read the fine print. But those guys, if it comes down to it, and especially from a raw material side where it hits the shelf as a fresh item, You are talking about the ability for them to create an artificial shortage, cancel contracts, eliminate or decrease the supply so much only for people to come begging to get product back. And all they're going to do is drive the market up and regain any losses plus massive amounts of profit for the volume that they put out to put that same meat back on the shelf. That's where you're going to get your spike in the grocery world. That's where you're going to go buy pork chops and go, oh, want these tonight, can't wait. Wait a minute, I just paid $5.50 last week. Now they're $9 a pound.
Yep.
How did that work?
Yeah.
Because you have money, you can play the game. That's what that level is. See, there's me. I sell commodities. I make a living. Then you go, I own a plant. I got a little more cash coming in. I control a few more things. It's great. When you own that many plants and you own the market share with two other people for the entire continental United States and other parts of the world, the ball's in your court to do whatever you want to do, and nobody can contest it because nobody's got the money to fight you or the ability to, compete with you on production. It's crazy. See, here's the thing most people don't realize. The grocery industry in the United States, okay, overall is a $1.46 trillion a year business, retail grocery. Grocery stores average on revenue that they bring in $650 billion a year. You're talking about numbers that most people could never even fathom in their life. So if you're Joe Blow pork store, then you have a manufacturing plant and Tyson's trying to screw up or screw everybody or Smithfield or any one of these guys, you're never going to win. You're going to be put out of business in 5 seconds because you can't compete with that level. You don't have the manpower. You don't have the manufacturing. I mean, it's crazy.
Yep. So I want to talk about how COVID-19, right, is affecting our shopping habits as a consumer, right? And I know a lot of people, right? You have, for instance, right, my parents, right, have never, done much shopping online for groceries anyway. Now, during times like this, me as well, right? More people are using Amazon, Whole Foods delivery, and all these different types of delivery services that are just obviously convenient, and take your risk of getting COVID-19, right? And diminishing that because you're not going out, you're not bumping into people, you're not dealing with a ton of people all day, and you're able to get that right to your doorstep. How will that affect the country's entire consumer habits in the future? How does that look?
Well, okay, I'll give you my personal take on it. It's all perception. Now, let's go back before this thing happened and before this outbreak happens and everybody's freaking out already. Day one, they hear something on the news. Let's go back to 6 months ago, 7 months ago. You tell me, or anybody tell me, when the last time you were in a store and you had somebody that you didn't know hugging on you, breathing in your face, sitting on top of you, all up in your personal space. That never happens. Are people 6 feet apart like you're social distancing now? No. But nobody's on top of each other and coughing in your face intentionally on purpose. People are coughing into their arms. They're coughing into a napkin. They're coughing into a hand, whatever it is. So my personal perception on that is that the shopping habits, they're skewed. People like me, I personally go out to the store still and I do what I got to do. I don't wear a mask. Now that might offend some people, but I'm not going to wear a mask because there's no point. I'm not in front of people enough. I go in, I go out, I'm done. I don't need to wear a mask in my opinion. Now, maybe up in New York, it's different because you're in an epicenter. You got a lot more congestion of people. Down here, you have older people. But most of those older people are utilizing the services you're talking about, or they have people doing it for their grandkids, uncles, aunts, whatever. And that's fine. But it's much more spread out here. Now, in terms of, I don't know, do I think people are going to go back out and shop normally again? At some point. It's that panic and anxiety mentality, fight or flight. They're going to think about it and say, well, I'm so sick and tired of sitting in the house. I'm paying all this extra money, even if I can afford it, to have these people deliver, and they're doing their service, and I got to do the right thing by them. But if I can go out for 20 minutes and keep my distance from people and ease into going back to a normal, I'm going to do that because I need to get out of this stir-crazy environment. I don't want to be in this situation anymore. At the same time, I also see the fact that this has changed the entire workforce. because most companies now are going to see that working remotely, when it was so frowned upon for so long that everybody had to be in an office and talk, you're actually much more productive when you're not being bothered with bullshit meetings and all this other crap that you don't need, and all these things that could have been in email, as people say. You don't need to do that in an office anymore. You can all have a Zoom meeting or whatever it is and get your job done efficiently, effectively, and eliminate any other possibilities. But the remote factor, I think, is going to be in the mindset for the consumer for a long time, because it's become now habitual and second nature, because it's all we've been able to do for the last couple months. I don't think it'll stick 100%, because there's going to be people like me, and even crazier than me, who don't care and they just want to go back to normal. They've done what they've said they were going to do because they were supposed to, but they want to go, I'm going to the mall. I'm going to touch clothes. I'm going to try things on. I'm going to be around human beings. I'm going to sit in the food court. I'm going to do whatever. And it's the same thing with grocery. You know, it cracks me up. You talk about habits. It is more confusing when I walk in a grocery store now to follow arrows like I'm doing color by numbers to walk around aisles to get stuff. I have to go over here to this side, and I'm over here. But I have to walk all the way around the store to get over there. To me, that's more disruptive than it is just walking by somebody at a safe distance, grabbing what you need, and walking out.
Uh-huh.
That's just my opinion personally.
Yeah,
I think it's ridiculous.
I mean, if you think about it, you're potentially going to pass even more people along the way, just
Exactly.
trying to get to the one item you need. And listen, I understand that, you know, we're doing whatever we can, because this is something that's unprecedented, right? We've never seen this before. It's not like we have this whole system of you know, pandemic instructions, right? That we have that we're putting out. So we're kind of just making it up as we go. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of these things the efficiencies will be increased if, in fact, God forbid, you know, this happened ever again, right? I'm sure we'll be much more prepared next time that this thing kind of outbreak came to us, right? So
Yeah, I just think that the United States, of course, and being one of the smartest and one of the greatest countries in the world, if not the greatest country in the world, there's other good countries, but we are the greatest country in the world, and we have the smartest people in this world. Take notes from what happened with SARS. Take notes what happened with the influenza outbreak of 1918. Take notes of the history, and figure with all the technology and all the brains we have in this country. Figure out some kind of a brainstorm. You don't have to have a direct setup, but some kind of an outline. That's the way I look at it. You know, not that we were ill prepared. Nobody thought this was going to get as bad as it was. But at the end of the day, it's, to me, the way I read it, and I don't keep up on it too much other than for my business aspect, but in the sense of the technology and the science behind it, everybody keeps kind of making it out to be the flu with steroids. Once you find a cure for it or some kind of vaccination for it, everybody's mindset will ease. And I do think, going back to what you said with the shoppers' habits, that's when I think you'll see the decline in strictly remote.
Yep, I agree. I think there's some people that, you know, the convenience will stick, and they'll continue to do, you know, get groceries delivered to doorstep. But
Yeah.
you know, like you said, there's people that just love to go out, love to interact with people, or have that, you know, have had that habit their entire life, and they're not looking to change that. You know, especially when things are safe again, and you know, obviously they have the ability to go back out and get back to the norm.
I made the joke the other day to somebody. I said, I think for the first time in 24 years, I actually miss having somebody ask me to come to their office for a meeting.
Right.
I mean, I like meetings. Don't get me wrong. I like sitting down with people, but now everything's been digital. So you get acclimated to being home and being comfortable. You know, you put your button-down shirt on, but you could be in your underwear if you want. Nobody cares.
Yep.
But I miss getting in my car and driving to a meeting, smelling the fresh air, going to sit in an office. Hey, what are we doing? What's the angle? What's the play? What are we doing?
Yep.
I miss that. But then at the same time, it is convenient to have somebody do your job, do stuff for you.
Yeah.
I get that. But at the same time, give you an example. I went out to dinner last weekend with my girlfriend. Okay. We sat outside by the water. People are on boats. People in bikinis. People in swimsuits. There was 1,000 people out there, but everybody was apart enough and it was comfortable. Nobody said boo. So you have that herd of people that are like, I'm done. I need a break. I got to get back to reality. And then you have the other people who are going to hunker down like, the sun's going to come and land on their house the next day.
Yeah.
It's all up here. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Is there health risk? Yes. Are you exposing yourself by not following certain precautions, whether they're mandatory or not? Absolutely. But it's the same thing in the food industry. You can have all the full food safety stuff on that I've had to wear in manufacturing facilities when I went in there to visit and see what my product looks like. And there is still a potential, even with all that stuff on, to get sick.
Yep.
There's no way around it. If something is airborne and there's even the slightest little break in your mask or the slightest little break in your gown or your hat, your boots, whatever, it's possible you can get it.
Yeah.
There's no way around that. You're never going to win against bacteria and viral stuff in the air. I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah. Once it's airborne, it's
anybody's game.
Exactly. Yeah. So I want you to discuss, where we're at with China, right? How are we at this point, right? Is it a possibility right now, if not ever, that we're going to be able to break ties with China? Or are we kind of married to China at this point? Do we need China to operate as a country and to fulfill our supply chain in the food industry?
All right. Well, so again, the golden question: can we cut ties with China? The reality, to keep people fed, clothed, and sustained for the near foreseeable future, there would be no way in hell you could do that, number one. And you would have to have a game plan in place from 5-10 years ago for this scenario right now, like a Nostradamus vision. If this was to happen and this was the issue, to figure out how to fill the gaps. It is damn near impossible for any foreseeable future. Now, the alternative to that is not completely unmarrying ourselves, as you say, to China, but it is looking for alternative sources. So in my world, I do probably about 300 million pounds a year of food ingredients from China into the United States. That's just China out of 24 countries, 300 million pounds a year. I can't honestly tell you that I can think of 3 or 4 facilities together with all the items I bring in from China that could meet my demand if they put all their efforts together to manufacture what I bring in from China.
Wow.
You have Egypt, you have Russia, you have the Ukraine, you have Turkey, you have Greece, you have Spain. You have all these other places in the world that sell products. But now it's a supply and demand game. When the demand exceeds the supply and you have to go outside, right, you're going to have to look to the people who have the capacity, the land, the labor force, which is the key, to make these things happen.
Yep.
Here's the problem. And this is coming from experience when visiting my plants in China and talking to factory workers. If you think about the average minimum wage or slightly above minimum wage employee in the United States and how much they make on a yearly basis, a weekly basis, whatever it may be, even after taxes, the Chinese factory worker that sends whatever money home for his family, eats some rice, eats some beans, eats some fresh vegetables because it's up right there in their homeland, they make probably 1/3 or less revenue for their pocket with the amount of hours and effort they put in. So if you want qualified people to be on the production line, qualified people to be in food safety, qualified people to be in manufacturing, just the cost of electric and running an operation in the United States and having all these people maintain it. Well, even most of the stuff now is 21st century and automated. You still need people. Your revenue to pay out just for salary alone to have those qualified people in far exceeds what you have to pay in China to get that done. And the vast space in China with the amount of people they have there in the growing regions in the north and the south and central parts of China is immense to what the United States is. It's mind-blowing. I mean, the amount of volume that they can pump out of China. So yes, can we cut them off at some point? Sure. If you have a master plan you start working on now, maybe 10, 20 years from now. But you're never going to have enough food. And we talk about food. You're never going to have enough food supply between the United States, major importers and growers in Europe, and other parts of the world. Even if you combined everything to feed the entire world population, it is physically impossible. That's a personal opinion, and I'd say pretty strategic on numbers when I talk to people who've been in the industry 40, 50 years and have had issues like this. They say there's no way we can cut off China. We can use alternatives, but you're still going to have to supplement with China. And you got to remember, appliances, all the other stuff that you buy. Go into Walmart and look at 100 labels. I'd say out of 100 labels, 75% of them are going to say China on them. If not, it's going to be Bangladesh, which India is theoretically part of Asia. It's going to be Vietnam. It's going to be Singapore. It's still Asian countries. You can't cut off Asia from the supply chain. Now, I know China is the quote-unquote starting point of this whole issue, and that's still up for debate with a lot of people, but it's still Asia. You can't cut off stuff like that and just rely on domestic supply, and you can't do it with European supply. It's just physically not possible.
So how long will the import and export industry, right? How long will it take to get back to pre-COVID-19? You know,
it never really went anywhere besides pre-COVID-19. I'll tell you, the biggest and most troublesome thing I had when this whole thing hit was my business. A lot of my business picked up heavily revolving around the Chinese New Year. So the Chinese New Year is basically about a month-long celebration, and these guys are non-existent. Some of the major owners and executives of these plants and stuff, they'll communicate very sparingly, but it's one of those things where you sit there and go, shit, I got to get my product out. Okay, load up containers. Then right after that, boom, this virus thing explodes. Now, my biggest problem was my product's clean, product's already processed, pre-COVID situation, pre-explosion of this nightmare that it's turned into. But now everybody in the mother who exports out of China is loading vessels. Wow. So trying to get vessel bookings and trying to get things done on time and the delays, that's what set me back. In terms of supply, the only downside, I had an extra 7 to 9 days that they extended the holiday to get this whole thing on the wraps and have the government allow which plants can go back and which were cleared out of areas. That's where my delay came in. So did I have a whole import-export scenario? No. I had bigger problems with other countries because they were completely locked down and couldn't do anything because of the international traveling and visiting and whatever. But China is the epicenter where I bring a lot of my product in from. I really only suffered a setback for, if you want to call it, 10 days total. And it was really more so getting these guys back in at a 50% capacity to load my containers and get my containers to the port so I can get my stuff out on the ocean. But there's three, I believe, three major steamship line vessels. They take appointments, and I can tell you I booked 20 different appointments, and out of those 20 appointments, only 2 of them would stick because they overbooked the hell out of it. So that was my issue, was getting stuff on the water. Once it was in transit, no problem. But that pre-existing part of getting it booked and put on the ship was the hard part. And then after that, it settled out. After probably 2 weeks after that, once everything kind of got evened out, it worked itself out pretty well.
Wow. So there's a lot of moving parts to your business, right? So how do you, I know that, you obviously, you run the show, right? You're the CEO. How do you, take these steps, right? And this entire process and break it down and create almost like an action plan for yourself, for you to go out and make things happen, right? Because I think that's a big, that's a big roadblock for people is, looking at the big picture and being able to break it down into daily steps, right? And making things happen accordingly and dealing with, your importers in China, your exporters in Texas, whatever it might be, right? How do you break that down and simplify that for yourself and your business?
So essentially, after many ups and downs and falling on your face and getting up again and figuring it out, ultimately it comes down to, first thing you do is have an action plan. Whether it's in your head, you write it down, you visualize it, what you want to attack and how you want to lay out your game plan, lay out your strategy. Second is you prioritize what's important. So if I know I have contracts that got to be fulfilled by a certain date, I have to prioritize those and make sure those plants are ready, they processed, they've done what they needed to. And then I have 2 other partners. One handles my financials and operations and supply chain overall management. And then I have somebody else who does all my logistics from the export side all over the world. And then obviously coordinates the trucking and stuff when it comes in here. So you got to prioritize who's important and what has to come in. Most of my business is contractual, so it goes from anywhere a 6-month period to a 12-month period, so I have time to plan. But
Okay.
there's a lot of caveats that come in there. Now, you say there's a lot of moving parts to my business. One of my biggest commodities I sell is, for argument's sake, broccoli. If I'm selling broccoli to somebody and I have a 12-month contract, first 4 loads can go out great. Crop's going great, packing off the line. Then all of a sudden there's a hailstorm, the rest of the crop's damaged. Now there's your first roadblock. The first thing most people would do would have a stroke. I don't know what to do. I got a contract. How do I fill it?
Yeah.
Well, luckily enough, my supply chain in China, I have 8 confirmed and approved food service plants for my customers that I use on a regular basis. I have 25 backups. That's how long I've been in China. So if my main guys can't help me out, I go to my backup resources. So you always have an A, B, C, D, E plan. Then once the stuff gets here, that's the easy part. Now you finish your roadblock, you get past that. So the next step is after you visualize, then you prioritize, then you follow up, and that's where your customer service and your value comes in. Because, hey, load arrived okay, boxes came in good, quality was good, taste was good, color was good, everything's fine. It's a beautiful day. You're still not done yet, though, because then you have that other side of it where, oh, well, the container was floor loaded. It came in. Whoever loaded it the wrong way. I got 2,000 out of 2,500 of the boxes on here are crushed. They're ripped open. I can't use the product. You got to get me replacement. All that comes into play. That's your worst case scenario. So at that point, you show your value and fix the problem. The next part of that is, the sale's still not done in my industry yet. Now it's fine. It comes in, it goes to the distributor. They put it on the street. It goes to your restaurant, it goes to this restaurant, it goes to that restaurant, whatever. Once the metaphor in my business is it's billed, it's delivered, it's billed, it's shipped on the street, it's eaten by the consumer and shit out and nobody complained, life's good. Then your sale is officially complete.
Wow.
That's the vision board I have to work with every day. Now, when there's a wrench in that equation, I utilize my logistics side. Hey, what happened here? Let's get pictures. Let's figure this out. I utilize my operations guy. Hey, operationally, how are we going to handle this? I got to get this load off the port, out of here before we get charges. I got to move it from here. We got to bring it back here, load it up. It's got to go back to China. I need this to come back in, that to come back in. And that goes for any country.
So long story short, you are a glorified problem solver, right? You're able to see a problem, right? Break it down, figure out the solution, and follow through with it, right? And I think that is so big because that is literally the job of an entrepreneur. It's just, obviously your strategy is going to be a little bit different than mine, which is going to be different than, someone else's. But at the end of the day, you're providing value for someone's problems, right? Or
every industry follows the same visual plan. It's cross-platformed and it's just fine-tuned to what you do. You're in real estate. I'm in import-export food commodities, aka anything pretty much I can import-export, whatever it is. Know your regulations, know your rules, know what the value you'll bring to the table to solve any problem. Is it quality product? Are you going to have a problem? How are you going to fix that problem? That's the key word in any business is how are you going to fix a problem? Anything that you sell, 100% of the time, there's always going to be a 75 to 80% chance you're going to have a problem at some point.
Yep.
And when you learn and you have experience in the field, street level, street smarts, and you know how to attack it head on, that is what makes you valuable, and that's what makes you an entrepreneur. You got to dance on your toes constantly. There's no laying back. When you lay back, when you become a Fortune 500 company, when you become a publicly traded company, when you have people who want to buy your company because you built that thing from the ground up and people love what you do, that's when you could sit back in your office chair and go, I could take a break now because I don't have to worry about this. Now I got a team of 30 people in my logistics department to fix these problems. I got a 50-person team of food safety people to fix this problem. I got a 40-person team of supply chain people to deal with this. Now I just want to look at the numbers. What have we lost? What have we gained? And what's our quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 profits, revenues? How did we do this year when we finally made it? Yep. That's what a CEO does. I got 3 letters in front of my name because I started the company with 2 other people and people know my face. So I got to be the guy. At the end of the day, I am a chief sales officer. I'm a salesperson. no company survives without selling a product, whether it's food, whether it's real estate, whatever company you're in, whatever industry you're in, you're always selling something. And as long as you know how to hone those skills, and the biggest skill is not the sale, again, it's the value, but even more so than that is the negotiation. Never undervalue yourself, never undervalue your product, and know what you're worth. Time is money, and if you know what you're worth and you know what your products are worth, regardless of the rest of the competition, show why, and that's where the sales part comes in. And then everything else falls into place, because then you build a team around you, then you build the empire around you, and then, you're insulated. Think about it. How many CEOs do you know that make $30 million, $40 million a year bonuses and make $100 million a year salaries? You think they're dealing with low-level stuff like a container came in and the boxes were crushed? They don't even know about it.
Absolutely. They got a couple other issues that they're dealing with.
Yes. Could we expand into 4 different countries this year? And what's it going to cost me? I need the accountant in here. I need the numbers guy in here. I'm sitting in a boardroom all day for 12 hours trying to figure out how to grow our company. Joe, Jim, John, Tommy, Tara, and whoever are dealing with the one container with the crushed boxes. Not me. And that's the point. That's what I aspire to get to. I want to be insulated. I don't want to have to be on the street anymore. Like I tell everybody all the time, I'm tired of being in the mud. But it's part of building a business.
Yep.
And if you can accept that and learn how to cultivate it and use your skills to the best of their abilities, and always, celebrate the small wins in the beginning. When you win, you win.
So true.
Whether it's big or small, don't matter. When you want the big win,
all wins, right? And I think that is sometimes just kind of overlooked, right? People don't, you have to enjoy the journey, right? You have to
the process,
enjoy the entire process from start to finish. And if you don't, right, you're never gonna get to where you want to go, because you're never going to appreciate what you had. You have to appreciate and be grateful for what you have at the moment in order for you
absolutely
to enjoy it in the end.
Absolutely. Starting a business is crazy. And I tell anybody who wants to do it, it's a great feeling knowing you have your liberties and your freedoms. But you know what? When you're used to getting a paycheck every month or every week or every 2 weeks, and you're going to be tight for 3 or 4 months while you're building this and seeing your first few bucks. And I'm not talking about a salary you can live on, but first seeing the green come in, you're positive. That's a great feeling. But you also have to have the mental latitude and stamina to understand that you're going to bleed for the first year. You're going to put a Band-Aid on for the second year, make a few bucks. The third year, you might actually make half of a living. And year 4 and 5, when you finally figured it out, is when you start making real money. And that's what people don't want to accept. Oh, I can go on Instagram and put my, a profile up and have 500 million followers tomorrow. You know how long those people who are, whether they're memers or whatever, food companies or electronics companies, they're marketing themselves, how long it takes for them to get 100,000 people to like them, let alone 1 million?
Yep.
You're not a celebrity. You're not on TV. You're not making movies. People don't know you. You got to market yourself and sell yourself. And you got to show the value of why somebody should follow them. Same thing with sales and all this. The value of why we should talk. What can I bring to you to help you? And that's what makes you successful. It's not a matter of just selling stuff. Anybody could sell stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And I think we could go on for days, right?
Oh, please.
Like, this is just so surface level. We could dive deeper and deeper. And, I would love to get you on here for another episode and really dive even deeper into, the entire sales process and how that, the growth of your business has looked from start to finish, because, it's intriguing to me, right? Just to see different businesses grow in different industries and understand that, at the end of the day, it all comes down to value, right? But what is one book, right? I know you're a big reader and you like to continuously, expand your mind, expand your knowledge, and like to be wholesome, right? As a business person, a salesman, what would you say is one of the best business books or sales books that you've read, more foundational, right? Something that that's maybe getting started in sales or is looking to, grow their business from the ground up at this point. What's one of those sales books that really has helped transform you into the salesman in which you are, and giving you some more knowledge to be able to go out and execute?
I've read the book probably at this point currently 35 times now. My suggestion to any salesperson or anybody who's going to run a business or for any aspect of their life on how to handle things is to read The Art of War by Sun Tzu. It is hands down the greatest strategic book ever written by an ancient Chinese emperor that holds its weight in water in any industry at any level, no matter where you are in life. How you digest it and how you accept it is what you will take out of it.
Wow.
Hands down, the greatest book I think I've ever read in terms of business strategy and sales. And the other one I would recommend is Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Love it.
A lot of tools in those books. If you use them the wrong way, you could become a ruthless, maniacal megalomaniac, or you can use them to your advantage as a positive person. I like to ride the fine line between both because that's how my business is. You got to use the ruthlessness in certain aspects, and you got to be kind in other aspects. But those two books right there will put you on a path to, I would say, ultimate mental dominance and enlightenment of how to react and deal with people as a whole.
Yep. And like we mentioned in the beginning of this episode, it's, everything's relationship driven, right? Whether, it doesn't matter where the technology is in this world right now. Without those strong bonds and relationships in your business, my business, and in any business for that matter, you'll never become, successful in a way and fulfilled, right?
No, I'll say it to anybody. The technology is great, makes you accessible sometimes, which gets annoying, and everybody can agree with that. But at the same time, it's nice to be on the fly and get things done. But there's still nothing better than a good sit-down lunch or a handshake with somebody and, hey, how you doing? How's everything going? Are we on the same page? We're good. That goes a long way because that's the true value. When that's there after 10 years, after 15 years, after 5 years, even after 2 months, and it's consistent, that's the value. The handshake and knowing and seeing the facial expression on somebody and not on a FaceTime or a video chat, but physically being in person and saying, hey, are we doing the right thing by you? Is everything good? You happy? What else can we do? And they smile and say, you're doing great. Right now I need this, or right now I'm good, but we'll talk in a month, we'll talk in a week, we'll talk in a year, whatever it is. That handshake and that personal interaction is still the greatest relationship aspect I think you can have.
Yep. And when you're able to positively affect someone emotionally and change their lives in a positive manner, helps you, it changes your life, right? And it truly
makes you feel like you're doing something.
Yeah, totally. Again, it comes back to fulfillment, having that clarity towards, what you're doing, and it gives you a purpose, right? I mean, that's what people really need in life, whether they realize it or not. Is just go out and have a purpose, right? It's not just about going out and making millions of dollars, although that's amazing, right? But without that purpose and without fulfillment and understanding of where you're going, that money and that capital doesn't mean much. So.
Well, I always go back to the most common denominator, which again, over time you learn this stuff. Karma is the most patient gangster in the world.
Yep.
You do wrong by people, over time you're going to get burned.
It's totally true, and it's in any industry, right?
Across the board. I mean, that's a universal truth. Karma is the most patient gangster in the world, and when you least see it coming is when you're going to get clipped, and you can't do anything about it.
Yep.
So that's really what it comes down to. Simple facts.
Mike, or should I say Cousine? I know that you're known by Cousine by many. I'm grateful to have you on today, man, and I'm grateful for our relationship and our friendship. It's been amazing. I think that this is going to provide tons of value to people, and I'm so glad that you were able to shed a ton of light on what we're dealing with, especially during this pandemic and COVID-19, and how this is going to affect the future of our supply chain and everything going on in the food industry, man. Thanks so much, and especially your sales, man. I think that you are, mentally and just at another level in the sales industry, and I respect you for that, and I definitely would love to learn a little bit more about what has gotten you there, right? And I know that it's a lot of trial and error, but sharing those failures can literally save someone thousands and thousands of hours and thousands of dollars, right? When you're getting into business, because I've learned from a few of my mentors huge mistakes, which helped me to save a couple of dollars, save a couple hours in gruesome time and lost money and capital. So,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I would definitely be interested if you want to do it again sometime. We could do a sales podcast, straight up sales podcast, because that's what I do every day, man. I read books about it. I sleep it. I breathe it. I eat it. I mean, I've been doing it for so long. It's just second nature to me.
I love it. I love it, man. And again, thanks so much. Appreciate you coming on and sharing with the audience. This is going to be a great one, brother. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, bro. Thanks, man.
Thank you.